Good morning, everyone. We're exploring the rich and complicated history of Christianity and studying the Bible in context. We identify bad theology and misconceptions about God, the Bible, about hell, and following Jesus' teachings. If you find this video helpful, please let us know in the comments section below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. We are in Genesis chapter 37. We've wrapped up all the topical stuff. We're now going to pick up with the Joseph saga and all the stories about Joseph. Interesting character in the Bible, serves a very specific function, which we'll talk about later. In this one, we call it falling out of favor. Joseph sort of goes from favorite son to becoming a slave. So we'll take a look at that particular chapter. Here's today's questions. Why they hated Joseph, they being his brothers. Why did they hate him? Well, maybe because you'll find out he's a little rat fink. That's why. What's with Joseph's dreams? What do they all mean? What were they all about? Was Joseph Jacob's favorite? I think I can prove conclusively, right from the Bible, yes, he was. Was Reuben being helpful? And why sell Joseph to the Ishmaelites? And how much do you get for a Joseph? And what's this story trying to teach us? Okay, so Genesis chapter 37, here we go. Here's the basic story outline. Jacob returns to Canaan. Remember, he had been living with his uncle Laban. He comes back. He reconciles with his brother Esau. He's living back in the land of Canaan again. He gifts his favorite child, Joseph, with a special coat. Now, if you grew up in Sunday school like I did, right, in the church, in Sunday school, Christian schools, you probably colored a picture of Joseph in his coat of many colors, right? Was it really a coat of many colors? But who wants to ruin the coloring page, right? We got to use up all those colors we don't normally use. Joseph has dreams and tells his family about them. His jealous brothers sell him to Ishmaelite traders and tell Jacob that he was killed by wild animals. So we're all pretty familiar with this story. Okay? If you're not familiar with it, you can go watch Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. He does a pretty good job of explaining what the story is all about. Okay? But even though Joseph is sold into slavery, God remains faithful to him despite all the human mistakes that are made. And that's really what these stories are about. God's faithfulness over and over again. God's faithfulness to the patriarchs. God's faithfulness to his people. That he says, I'm going to give you this land. I've promised this to you, and it happens. And even though they struggle for decades, for years, for centuries, God is still faithful. He makes sure that it happens. I want to talk about some of the echoes and the foreshadowings that go on here. Okay? Because oftentimes they use the same kind of story elements, but to make a slightly different point. Jacob has separation. His separation from his brother starts with his father being deceived. Do you remember this? Jacob steals the birthright. He deceives his father, and then his brother swears to kill him, and he has to flee. So his separation from his brother starts with his father being deceived. Joseph's separation starts with his father being deceived as well. His brothers dip his coat in blood and say that he's dead. And so both of them have a separation from their brothers. It both starts with deception to the father. So that's a little bit of an echo. Jacob lives separated for 20 years. He goes and lives with Laban for 20 years. Joseph lives separated from his brothers for 20 years. So he'll spend some time working for Potiphar, and then he'll spend some time in jail, and then working for Pharaoh. Both conclude with a reunion of brothers and reconciliation. So these two stories echo each other. I want you to kind of think about that they would have similar storylines, that maybe the sins of the father get reflected in the sins of the children. Joseph's imprisonment and release will foreshadow, and this is the foreshadowing, the fact that he is imprisoned and then he is released foreshadows the Israelites' bondage and release. They're going to become slaves in Egypt, but eventually they will be freed. So this is like a little mini version of it, like a little foreshadowing of it. Joseph is in bondage, and then he's released. The Israelites are in bondage, and then they are released. Let's take a look at the text. Genesis chapter 37, verses 1 and 2. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them. All right, so 17, that's an important. Is this the actual number? We don't know, but we do know that the word associated with the word 17, our English word 17, the Hebrew word, okay, is also related to the number 7, which is completion or perfectness or all that kind of stuff. So it's saying something about Joseph, when Joseph had kind of reached his sort of full maturity, when he was like, he's this perfect little character kind of that we see. The sons, now, they talk about the sons of Bilhah. That's Rachel's maidservant. Now, if you want to talk about problems with blended family, Jacob's got how many wives? And at least 12 sons and an unknown number of daughters. Okay, do you think there might have been a little family chaos, some sibling rivalry, maybe even some wifely rivalry? And then they got to compete against one of them, Rachel, who died, the beloved wife who dies. And will you ever live up to her? Because we know that, in memory, people are even better than they were when they were alive. So we got all kinds of issues going on there. So with Bilhah, we have Rachel's maidservant. There are 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. And then with Zilpah, that's Leah's maidservant, because remember, Rachel and Leah are in competition, who can have the most sons, that kind of thing. By the way, how many sons did Leah actually have? 6. She wins. Okay. With Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, she has Gad and Asher. So, who is he talking about? He's talking about Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. Those 4 are out there tending the flocks. Joseph goes out there and he brings back a bad report. He's a little rat fink. He probably went out there. They're not really tending the flocks. They're just sitting around and drinking and having a good time. It's really all the servants, that we have. They're taking care of the flocks. Who knows? Whatever he did something. He's a little tattletale. That's his problem. Why did they hate him? Because he tattled on them. But it also seems to indicate something else. That because these are children of maidservants, they're not treated like full sons. So he thinks it's okay. Well, I'm Rachel's son. That makes me special. He probably had that idea in his head that he was a little bit on the special side, especially since he was the favorite. See, now Israel, that's Jacob, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. So was he really the favorite? Says so right there. Says so right there. He loved him more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age and made him an ornate robe. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of the others, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. All right, how many of you have siblings? Who's got siblings? Do you know that at least your parents had at least a favorite? Okay, and if you were not the favorite, did you sort of have a hard time with that particular sibling? Were any of you here the favorite? You were the favorite? Gabby was the favorite. Okay. I like to point out, to all my classes when I'm teaching them, I always ask them, I say, who's the oldest? I'll get a whole bunch of people raise their hands. I say, are there any middle children? And those people raise their hands, and they're like never the favorite. They're like, oh, yeah, it's the middle, right? I say, who's the youngest? And some people will raise their hand. I said, isn't it great to know that if you're the youngest child, you're really the child that your parents wanted? Because when you were born, they went, oh, that's the one. We can stop now. That's good. We got the one we wanted. Okay, let's knock it off from now on. My oldest children in the class always complain about that. They're, that's not true. I'm like, let's ask the youngest children. And apparently all of us agree. I am the youngest child, so. They hated him. They hated him. They could not speak a kind word to him. Jacob's preferential love for Joseph echoes Isaac's preferential love for Esau. Remember, Isaac loved Esau more than he loved Jacob. And now Jacob loves Joseph more than he loves his other children. See how this gets passed down? The idea that this is okay, the idea gets passed down, this kind of preferential love. Is this the love of our Father? Is this the love of who God is? Does he love us that way? He has his favorites. He loves certain ones more than other ones. And we're going to find out that's not true. But human fathers sometimes are not perfect, and they do things like show preferential love. Ornate robe. Let's talk about the word ornate robe. Some Bibles translate it as ornate robe. Some say a coat of many colors. Some say an embroidered robe. I think that's missing the mark, all of them. I think the important part is if you look at the actual Hebrew words, ketonet pasim, it could mean ornate, but most likely it means a robe that was long enough to go all the way to the ground and had long sleeves on it. We see this same terminology described when David gave his daughters robes, these long robes that go all the way to the ground, long sleeves. Why is this important? Because if you were expected to do work, your robe would be shorter so it didn't drag on the ground. Your sleeves would be shorter so you could work. The fact that he gets a robe that goes all the way to the ground and has long sleeves means he doesn't have to work. So here you have all these people, all his brothers out there working in the fields, taking care of sheep, and he gets to walk around in his long coat, not having to work. He sort of I'm thinking he got promoted to supervisor and gets to report on all of them. They're out there playing football or soccer or whatever they played back in those days. They're not really working. So this shows the absolute favoritism. Yeah, all the rest of you have to work. Joseph doesn't. He said to them, hey, listen to this dream that I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Now, that's not a very hard dream to interpret, is it? Okay, there is a little foreshadowing here. The brothers journeyed to Egypt for grain and bowing down before him. So these sheaves of grain sort of foreshadow that there's going to be a famine. They're going to go and search for grain, and they're going to bow down before Joseph. So there's a little foreshadowing going on there. Second dream. Then I had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream. And this time, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Okay, so let's take a look at that symbolism. The sun, the moon, and the 11 stars. The symbolism is from Genesis chapter 1, verses 16 through 18. This is where the symbols come from. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. Notice these words, govern. He also made the stars. God set them in the vault of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night. Notice the word govern. And to separate light from darkness, and God saw that it was good. The sun and the moon and the stars came to symbolize rulers, kings, emperors, rulers. And so what Joseph is saying is, all these rulers are going to come before me and bow before me. All these patriarchs are going to come and bow before me. See, we can understand this when we're doing Joseph's dream, but we totally screw it up when we're doing Revelation. And suddenly it becomes real, literal. Stars are going to fall from the sky. The sun's going to turn dark. No, that's rulers and empires and things like that that are falling, not literal. I don't know why we messed that up. It's because apparently we don't keep consistency throughout the Bible in our symbolism. But according to this, Joseph will be bowed down to by all his patriarch brothers, his mothers, his father. Joseph's dreams indicates he has a special relationship with God. The fact that he's having dreams and visions indicate that he has a special divine relationship with God, because we have other dreamers in the Bible. And every time you see a dreamer in the Bible, it means they have some kind of special relationship with God, those who see dreams and have visions. Abraham and Jacob both had dreams and visions, showing this special relationship. Can you think of other dreamers besides Joseph? Daniel would eventually have dreams and rise to prominence because of his ability to interpret those. Jacob sends Joseph out to check on his brothers in the field, right? I told you he's the supervisor, the 17-year-old supervisor, the youngest, almost the youngest of all the sons. Only one son younger than him, which would be Benjamin, yeah. Jacob sends Joseph to check on his brothers in the field. They are tending the sheep in Shechem. That name should kind of click off if you remember the end of Jacob's saga. They moved from Shechem to Dothan. Now, they probably moved because of tensions between them and the other people out there tending sheep. Because if you remember, Dinah is raped by the son of the king of Shechem. And that caused that whole problem. You remember? They convince all the men, hey, we'll intermarry, you can have our women, we'll take your women, blah, blah, blah. You just got to get circumcised. And they all get circumcised, and when they're all sore and can't do anything, the brothers come in and kill everybody. So there's a little tension in this area. In fact, Joseph had, told them he was upset. He's like, now you've made us obnoxious to the people of this area. So probably there was some tension going on. This is why they moved on. It's like, Shechem's not happy to see us again. Want to get circumcised? It's probably not a pretty picture there. So they've moved on. So Joseph finds out that they've moved on. He goes on. As Joseph approaches, they decide to kill him. Who knows how they come up with this decision? Oh, there's Joseph in his coat. Mr. Supervisor. What's he going to talk about us today? We ought to just kill him. Yeah, I think we should. Should we do lunch first or after? They decide to kill him. But Reuben intervenes. Don't kill him. I don't want his blood on my hands. Let's not put his blood on. Let's just put him in the cistern and he can die, right? Kind of this big holding container, big stone holding. Let's throw him in there, die on his own. His blood won't be on our hands. We'll just cause his death. We won't actually kill him. We'll just cause his death. Apparently that's better. Reuben intervenes. Now, why did Reuben intervene? Was he being helpful? Did he suddenly become a nice guy? This is the kind of thing about the Bible. Anytime somebody tells you what somebody's motives are, it's a guess. It's a guess. Because the Bible doesn't tell you what their motives are. So I'm guessing one of two possibilities. Either one, Reuben intervenes because as the oldest son, he would be blamed for Joseph's death. Now remember, Reuben is already in trouble with Jacob. Reuben is already in trouble with Jacob because he slept with Bilhah, that attempted coup, that aggressive move to take over the family, which failed apparently. Possibly it's to restore his relationship with Jacob. Listen, I know I slept with Bilhah, I tried to take over the family, become the family head. I get it. You're a little upset with me, but look, everybody else wanted to kill Joseph, but I saved him. Do I still get an inheritance now? Is it cool? Are we good? You mad, bro? What? Okay. So I think it's something like that. One of these two, or possibly a combination of both. It could be both. While Reuben is away, they sell Joseph to a group of Ishmaelites, Midianite merchants, which I think is kind of interesting because in some of the verses in this chapter, it identifies them as Ishmaelites. In others, it identifies them as Midianites. And they are not the same thing. So this is apparently some kind of trade caravan coming by. It's probably a mixed group. Okay? Ishmael, as we remember, is the son of Abraham through Hagar. That's where the Ishmaelites come from. And the story is they become the Arabian princes. So this is probably some kind of caravan, trade caravan, passing through, probably carrying goods to sell, probably moving across the Arabian Peninsula. Midian, on the other hand, is the son of Abraham through Keturah. That's the other wife he married after Sarah died. And they also are supposedly becoming, part of the Arabian groups that are out there. So, we have these explanations of where all these different groups come from. But, Ishmaelites and Midianites are not the same. But they may have been working and traveling together in this caravan. So that's probably why they mention them in both. Okay? Identified as patriarchs of the Arabian tribes. So the Ishmaelites and the Midianites are identified as patriarchs of the Arabian tribes. So we could just say they sold them to a bunch of Arabs. Reuben returns, Joseph is gone. What? I was going to get you out of that cistern, take you back home to Dad, score some brownie points. Look, Dad, saved your favorite son. How about I get a supervisor position? Can I have one of those really cool coats? Reuben returns, Joseph is gone. The brothers kill a goat and dip Joseph's coat in the blood to deceive the father. So here's the deception part. They take the coat back. Look, it's got blood on it. Joseph was killed by a wild beast. We're so sorry. We know how much you liked him. We liked him too. Dead. No, we liked him. Jacob goes into mourning. Jacob starts mourning. He's very upset. He's grieving. And Joseph is sold first to the Midianites. They take him across to Egypt, and he's sold to Potiphar, who's the chief of the guards. So Joseph is sold into slavery. And that's where this chapter ends. Joseph being sold into the household of Potiphar. Not a good end for a favorite son. All right, so having heard this, what can we pull from this? How about let's not play favorites? Causes family strife. How about repeat after me? That's what families do. I know it drives us all nuts, and we've all had this experience that you say something, it comes out of your mouth, and at that moment that you say it, you wish you could pull it back because you hear your mother's voice coming out of your mouth, or you hear your father's voice coming out of your mouth, and you're like, how did that happen? I swore I would never say that in my entire life, and it just fell out of my mouth. That we tend to spend a lot of our time recreating our family of origins. And we kind of repeat the cycle of what our parents did, and they're repeating the cycle of what their parents did, our grandparents and our great-grandparents, and on it goes back. And we need to be able to break these cycles, to recognize them and break them. We spend a great time, as I said, recreating our families of origin and our churches of origin. I figured this out a long time ago. I've been in ministry for a long time. And, we'll have people who will come in, and they're like, oh, I love this church. This is a great church. You know what? When I was at the church of the Revolving Door, they had a children's handbell choir. We should have a children's handbell choir. Why don't we have a children's handbell choir? Because we don't have children? Well, we ought to get some so we can have a children's handbell choir. Or, when I was at the church of the the Revolving Door, they used to have, and they would name some things, some activities, some traditions, some whatever. We ought to do the same thing. Some of them get pretty obnoxious about it. You hear from them almost on a weekly basis. When I was at the Church of the Revolving Door, we did this and that and something, and you're just like, whoa. Why don't you go back to the Church of the Revolving Door where they have all the stuff you want? I would never go there. They're a horrible church. So you're trying to recreate it here. Or you try to recreate the church you grew up in. Well, why doesn't this church have pews? Because they're uncomfortable? I don't know. You guys are sitting in pews back there. You guys are in the pew section. Are they uncomfortable? Because we have nicer couches over there. Nice, right? Those are the 1950 pews. That's the section you're picking to sit in. I'm just saying, right? We got the 1980 chairs and the 2010 couches, so, right? But we do it. Why don't we use a hymnal? Just like we did when I grew up as a kid. Everybody loved the hymnal. No, they didn't. You hated it as a child. You actually drew in it. Probably if I went back to church, I could find the hymnal where you drew that picture of Bart Simpson right over the song, Holy, Holy, Holy. But we try to recreate things. That's just our nature. Whatever we grew up with, that's familiar with us, and we start doing it over and over again. The echoes between Jacob's life and Joseph's show this. Notice all these echoes we're getting? It's the same pattern of behavior. It's the same thing that happens over and over again. Because guess what? If you grew up in chaos, you will create that chaos for yourself and suffer the same consequences. You're like, I would never let that happen. You'll actually work towards it. I think the worst part is when you wake up one day and you go, I swore I would never do this, but I think I married my mom. just in a different body. Or I think I married my dad, but just in a different body. Why are they exactly the same? Because we're used to it. It's what brings us comfort, the familiarity of all that. That's why we keep dating the same guy or girl over and over again. What are we passing down to the next generation? What are we passing down to the next generation? We need to stop and ask ourselves that. We need to examine our family origins and say, this is what I learned, this is what I was taught, this is what I carry with me. Now, as I pass this on to the next generation, to my sons, daughters, nieces, nephews, children, grandchildren, whatever, what am I passing down? Now, early in my counseling career, way back when, I worked with children of alcoholics. That was what I spent about the first 2 years of my counseling career doing, working with children of alcoholics. And do you know that if you have one alcoholic in your family, like say a mom or dad, one parent who's an alcoholic in the family, there's almost a 50% chance you will be an alcoholic. If you have two, it's 80% because you take that behavior and it gets passed down. Are we going to pass that down to the next generation? Are we going to pass down our addictions, whatever they are, whether it's addictions to, alcohol, drugs, smoking, food, sex? What is the addiction that you're passing down? Your addiction to anger? What are you passing down? We need to stop and ask that. But more than that, not only in our families, we need to ask that in our church. What is this church passing down to the next generation? What are we passing down? Right there in the comment section, you can write heresy, definitely. This church, open door, heresy, blasphemy, all those things, right? What are we passing down as a church? Will they repeat it from us? This is why I am so concerned and so critical about fundamentalism and evangelicalism, because I look at what are we passing down. Are we passing down that we are going to force people to become Christians through political power and threats of violence? Are we going to purge our churches of all minorities so that we can have a white Christian nationalist nation? Are we just repeating the Civil War that was lost but never really surrendered? Are we just repeating the white Christian nationalism that existed in Germany? Are we just going through it again? Is this what we're going to pass on to the next generation? Because we need to stop and break that. Because when you look at what it's supposed to be, the vision of how heaven is supposed to be, it's every tribe, every tongue, every nation that gathers around the throne room of God. Not just the white tongue, the white nation, the white people. What will they repeat from us as a church? What are we passing down? Oh, I put this song up here. I hate this song. I sung this song as a child at least daily. And I hate this song because I think it passes down the wrong message. You guys know this song? Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banner go. Thank you very much, Sabine Baring Gould, 1884. I hate this song. I had to sing it. As a child, I thought it was fine. It was kind of a cool imagery. Yeah, we're soldiers, right? I think of other Sunday school songs we sang, right? I may never march in the infantry, ride in the cavalry, shoot the artillery. You guys remember that one? But I'm in the Lord's army. Oh. I think Christianity needs to purge all battle images, all war images, because it promotes violence. Oh, you're so woke. What are you? Yeah, get with me on this because, wait, Charles and Mabel have something to say about this song. I love this song. I love this hymn. That's because Charles sung it when they first wrote it back in the 1880s. Mabel, we should sing it every week. Weekly, yeah. No, absolutely not. I don't think so. Right? What are we teaching the next generation with this song? That we're soldiers? Because what are soldiers trained to do? To fight and to kill. Is that what Christians are supposed to be? Are we trained to fight and kill? Or are we trained to repair the breach and to bring healing in our hands? To bring reconciliation to God? What is it that Jesus did? Did Jesus lead an army against Jerusalem and overthrow King Herod? Did he raise up a battalion and overthrow Caesar? No. He spent his time healing people as he passed through the land and teaching them the way of peace and love. So why are we telling us that we're all a bunch of soldiers? Now, I will admit, I'll play fair. Normally in Sunday school and in the church school that I went to, we only sang the first verse. If you look at the second verse, it does say, we're fighting against Satan. But I was raised Southern Baptist. So anytime there's a hymn, you sing the first and third verse. You never sing the second verse. If there's 5 verses, you sing the first, third, and fifth verse. Because apparently even number verses are evil. So I didn't even know there was a second verse until like a couple of years ago. By then I totally hated the song, okay? But if you were raised on that first verse like I was, then your idea is that it's non-Christians who are the enemies, or that we should seek and save. Are they truly our enemies, or are we there to seek and save those who are lost? What are they? If we're soldiers, we're fighting against the foe, why do we keep pointing out different people saying, oh, you're an enemy of God? God hates you. You should be stoned. You should be killed. You should be destroyed. I mean, who are these? Is that how we're supposed to think of them, as our enemies? Or are we supposed to think of them as those who are lost and we need to seek them and save them? Do you see the difference? And it's in our songs that we teach little kids. And they grow up with this and we pass it on to them. If you're trained as a soldier, you're trained to fight. And you'll find a fight somewhere. Can we pass down to our children and the next generation of the church love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control? Because these are the fruit of the Spirit. If we are truly Spirit indwelled, this is what we should see as being produced in our lives. Is this what's coming out of us? Because I would say, if you look at evangelicals, this is not what's coming out of them. I see hatred, I see bigotry, I see a lust for power. These are not the things that's supposed to be coming out of them. And they're going to pass these down to the next generation. And how do they do that? Well, let's take them out of public schools and put them in our own little private schools, and we'll have them sing Onward Christian Soldiers every day. Let's post the 10 Commandments in the classroom instead of the Beatitudes. Let's teach our kids an alternate form of history, and we won't let them ever leave that education. Okay, so they're going to go to their little Christian preschools and their Christian elementary schools and their Christian high schools, and we're going to send them off to our Christian colleges and universities, and we're going to indoctrinate them so thoroughly that they are soldiers, that they are the Joshua generation that's going to bring down this evil world. And we're going to teach them all of this, and we're just going to pass. Is that what we want? What are we passing down? We need to do something about it. We need to stand up and say no more. We need to teach them love and joy and peace and patience and kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So we need to make sure if you're going to keep them in that church-run school, that's what's on the curriculum. We need to teach them love one another. We need to teach them love your neighbor. We need to teach them love your enemy. That's what we have to teach. Be peaceful. Not only seek peace as in nonviolence, but seek peace in the aspect of shalom, blessing others. Are you a blessing to other people? I tell you what, I run into a lot of evangelicals today, and they're not a blessing to me. I don't feel blessed after my encounter with them. I'm like, oh, here they come. What are we going to pass down? It's time to rethink that as a church and call out those who are not teaching this. We cannot pass these down unless we have it ourselves first. And this is always the point. I don't put these things up to judge other people. These are messages to myself first. Do you have these things? Because you can't pass it down unless you do. And each of us sitting here today should be looking at this going, do I have these things? If not, that's what I need to work on. See, because once we have it and it becomes part of who we are, that's what naturally gets passed down to the next generation that interacts with us. But we have to have it first. With that, let me close in prayer. Lord Jesus, we just come before you. You set the example. You led a human life. We see all throughout the Old Testament people who were sometimes successful and oftentimes failures. We see how imperfect human beings are, and yet you give us the example of how to live our life. Lord Jesus, help us to imitate your life so that we can pass down your message, your teachings, your way of living. Let us become imitations of you so that we can pass down from generation to generation the love and joy and peace that you taught us. We just pray this in your name. Amen. Once again, if you found today's content helpful, be sure to subscribe to our channel, ring the bell, give it a big thumbs up, like it, share it. You can even help sponsor our weekly videos if you want. You can see Deborah about that. All these things help our community here and online and our growing YouTube channel. Thanks so much for being here. If you're in here and you're not commenting, no, hit some comments. It really helps us. Throw some comments in there. One last thing I want to point out. You know, as I was talking, right, with the echoes, Jacob's life gets echoed in Joseph's life. But Joseph's life is now the foreshadowing what's going to happen to Israel. He's going to be imprisoned and then released. That's kind of the way that it is, even in our country. What's happened to us previously is happening again, and it'll happen to the entire nation because of what we pass on. We need to think carefully about that. Let me close with this benediction. As you leave this place, remember, we choose what we pass on. God bless you all. Go in peace. You are dismissed. Thank you.
We are one in Christ. We are one in God. We are one in unity. We are one in truth. We are one in faith.